Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Horses Advocate podcast. I have Kerry Hayes with me today, who is got something that's unique, that's not all about horses, but it's everything about horses and our ability to connect with them. And Kerry works with horses to help guide, I love this, when horse wisdom guides personal and professional development. So I want to welcome you, Kerry, to this. Thank you. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, I mean, this goes back at least to, modern times to Winston Churchill saying, the outside of the horse is good for the inside of the man, a quote I'm sure you've heard. Um, but, horses have been helping and working in conjunction with humanity for eternity. And we went from, basically, it started with noticing that the movements of the horse helped with people that had restrictive movements, abilities within their bodies and all those things. And it's over the years, over 30 plus years, has spread out into awareness and human development through doing what horses do best and bringing awareness to ourselves. It's the way that they survive in nature. It's the way that the reason they live in a herd, and as prey animals, they have to be so ultimately aware of their surroundings. And when we see ourselves mirrored in their reactions to us, it teaches us a lot.
Yeah, you've touched on so many things that I just want to dig into.
Yeah.
The street, the two-way interaction, humans on one side, horses on the other. Right or wrong, at least I believe that the horses have honed into this experience of being aware and being in the moment, and humans, day by day, just get further and further away from that. And I find myself struggling with the humans I interact with, not the horse people, but the ones that are at the convenience store, out in the interstate. They seem to be in their own world, and they don't understand that we're living as a group of people and we need to be aware of each other. And when I walk into a horse's stall, the horse is like, whoa, all antennae are pointing toward me, and they're trying to figure out who I am. Am I a threat, friend, or foe?
That's
So,
right.
so I think the horses have got it. We're not training the horses so much, although they've been trained to be afraid of us. But I'm sure the horses you use are basically being mirrors and helping draw out the person to be whole. But tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't any training to teach the horses to do this. This is who they are. There can be a few exceptions, horses that have been through severe traumas of their own. You wouldn't necessarily want to put into this work of helping humans, because they need all the help that they can get. And you've seen, I'm sure you've seen lesson horses that do 20 lessons a day and they're just shut down, right? They just I think you've talked about it numerous times, the glazed over look in their eyes. So some of those things, yeah, exactly, that certainly would not work in my favor as a co-facilitator with a horse in helping other humans. But for the most part, it is really just what they do naturally. And as you said, you said when you walk in a stall, but theoretically, it's probably when you walk in the barn, most of the horses become instantly aware of you, and want to know if you're friend or foe. They use, all their senses, and we are constantly putting off nonverbal information that, as you say, we get further and further removed from as our technology and our our need for technology increases. And so for the horses to sense our respiration, our heart rate, any stress hormones that are circulating in our system, the pheromones, all those things, as they would with anybody else, because frankly, if a mountain lion walks past a herd of wild horses, they are going to need to know instantly, is this time to run? Or did that guy just fill his belly and he isn't interested in us? And then we can preserve our energy, because as you know, horses are very much energy conservers. They're big bodies subsisting on, forage for the most part, not a lot of calories. They don't want to waste time and energy if they, doing something that is unnecessary.
So I bet you
So
have a ton of stories, but I'd like you to dig into a couple of them, because most of the people listening to this, they're either work with horses or they ride horses. And your clientele do neither. Your clientele are trying to learn who they are and become better at that. So this is a new way of looking at it. I hope the listeners to this understand that we're approaching this connection. I had a long talk with Linda Pirelli on this the other day about how we connect with horses. But I want to know about the pure connection that you find when you take the city folk or someone who's never been around a horse. And what do you bring out of these people? How, not just how, because it's just why, what, cover all the W's for me. Give me some examples.
yeah. Of course, it's important to find out what their experience is, what their motivation for coming to such a session is. But behind all that, as you say, the W's, it's the why. Why do they want to learn something new? Why do they want to go through personal growth or spiritual development, or building a better corporate team, or a stronger family, even deeper relationship with themselves, more personal awareness? All these things are easily learned in the presence of a horse. And when you uncover their why, they tend to get a little bit more congruent in the head and the heart. And the horse, who is not necessarily interested in some of the preliminary discussions that the client and I have in the presence of the horse, when that client starts to get more congruent between head and heart, the horses walk right over. Even before the client finishes the thought out loud, they have reached that spot non-verbally, and the horse recognizes it. And so by the time they finish their sentences, the horse is, standing right over their shoulder, or nose to their heart, or, right there with us.
What's the reaction to that?
Yeah. What's their reaction? Amazement. That's typically when the tears start to flow. There's a lot of tears.
Yeah.
It's that sense, I think, of coming home to themselves. And I think that just
is it kind of like, oh, what the heck am I doing here? This will never work. And then when it works, it's almost like, they're seeing a truth they couldn't believe could happen. And does that help open up their willingness to search more? Does it make them more afraid of who they are?
It can definitely cause some pause, but it's usually makes them much more curious. That is, the typical reaction is the curiosity and the desire to continue to dive in.
Yeah.
When you were here working on my horses, I was relaying to you a great story of a team of women that came to me in they wanted to have a conversation about the business that they were building together. And we did some great preliminary exercises. You know, they each chose a horse to work with, which thankfully usually is a mutual decision. You know, sometimes a horse isn't interested and walks away. The horses always have freedom of choice in this matter. They're at liberty. Most of the time, most of the exercises are completely at liberty. And so what happened with these three women, as they progressed through their half-day workshop, we kept sort of upping the ante. And so we got to the point where we had two horses in the arena and all three women working together. And they had, putting context around it, you know, they were identifying the horses, the energy of the horses, as being the business that they wanted to create, the success that they wanted to reach. And the three of them were uniting to approach this business and grow this, you know, to success. And they, you know, having no horse experience, they were just feeling very, they were putting on their Wonder Woman energy and all linking together and approaching the horses. And the horses were, up to this point, a little uninterested, more interested in hanging out at the gate of the arena.
Yep.
And so the three of them walk up behind them, and as they approach, maybe they're 50 feet from them, and I ask them to pause. You know, we have certain cues after, as part of our safety discussion at the very beginning. You know, if you hear the word pause, you got to stop what you're doing immediately and eyes on me.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously we want to keep everybody safe. And so they, we had a discussion about their energy and at what level their energy was versus the horse's energy, you know, this a typical conversation. And so they re-strategized a little bit as to how they might approach their business, in other words, their horse.
Right.
And again, you know, they followed up a little too much, because now they encircled in this arch and they were entrapping. You know, they were coming, you know, from a horseman's point of view. I've been a horseman my whole life. So from that aspect, you know, I have to balance those two aspects, the life and leadership coach and the horse person. And so I was just watching this, and I saw this entrapment energy, and I thought, okay, let's pause again, and a little more discussion, a little more coaching about how they're responding, what their goals are, how they could be interpreted, their energy could be interpreted. And they ended up setting the horses off, and they ran and ran and ran, just full gallop, you know, and the three participants stood with me. We made ourselves big in the center of the arena, and the horses ran and ran and ran. And so then we started to discuss their energy a little bit. And one is a dancer. So she started to move her body in all these whimsical ways and release her high energy through her body movements.
Sure.
Hopefully nobody can see this video, and this is just audio, because here I am waving around.
No. They're seeing you.
Oh boy. And then another one of the three women was an opera singer, and she started belting out an opera song, and the horses just immediately stopped dead in their tracks.
Wow.
And turned and looked at these. Yeah, it was a very powerful moment. And it was the women coming to their core, to their centers, to understand, rather than being so outside focused and task oriented. You know, as humans, we love to be task oriented.
This sounds so typical of some new horse owners that I've seen, that have an agenda and they're going to do something to the horse, like go in there, catch it, put a halter on, and make it behave for the vet walking in the stall or the farrier or whoever. But it seems like what you're saying is, if the people could understand that all they have to do is present who they really are, a singer, a dancer, or a non-threatening person, that can at least make that initial connection to where you can start a conversation. So what happened with these ladies and the horses? What happened after that once they started to dance around?
Yeah, so we had some other tools out in the arena, some markers, and they continued with their exercise, and there was success in the exercise, but in the end, the success centered around their individuality more than their collaboration. And so in the follow-up, I learned that they had made the decision that they were not going to do this collaboration with the three of them, that they would remain each other's support system for their individual businesses. And it's been a couple of years since that day, and they are all very successful in their own right now. So
Well,
yeah.
relationships are the same, whether it's between you and your horse, between two people. And it requires, just because you date someone the first time and you think everything's fine, it's the second and third date where you realize that, no, you're not even on the same page. And your horse, unfortunately, when somebody buys a horse, they are committed and they just can't get rid of the horse. So what do you do for a person who is really struggling to make the connection? They really, really want to work as a team in their corporate structure, but they just can't break through that barrier, but they have to. Does a horse help with this? What?
Yes, a horse can help with this for sure. And we break it down and break it down and break it down to the smallest steps, and the biggest factors in their drive, in what drives them. What are their values? Where did they come from? Are they aware of what their values are? We learn, and there's varying numbers, but between 75 and 95% of our communication is nonverbal. And yet we as humans, that's all we want to do is talk.
Or text.
Or text. Or text, yes. And so it's really eye-opening for so many to return to that place of inner knowing. And I think when people get to those places, a lot of that stuff that they didn't think was going to work out tends to work out.
So they must be willing to change. Because if they're not willing to change, it would never work out, I would imagine. I mean, what do you do? What do you do with a person who, I'm just going to be really crazy with this, but let's say they're women, they haven't had any luck with men. So all men are evil, Here they bring a person in, oh, I've tried a horse, I was thrown off at 3. Something's driving me to create this business. I want to join, but if they can't join up with a horse, how can they join up with their own people or vice versa? So,
yeah,
I tell people all the time. No, go ahead.
Well, it's during the early days of the pandemic, I was helping a friend build a business unrelated to horses, and was able to not spend as much time with my horses, which prompted a move to a higher end full service facility for them to live in, rather than, so that I was comfortable if I couldn't get there, but 2 or 3 days a week. And in those early days, that's exactly what was happening. But then as I got more adjusted into doing what I was doing outside of horses, and then to come back, whatever, I was there, I was with my horses, and and I had two women, both in their 70s, approach me at different times when nobody was around and say to me, I don't understand how you have such connection with your horses. And riding just seems like an afterthought, not your primary focus. And I said, well, because that's exactly what it is. It's a, if we feel like it,
Yeah.
we'll do it. Otherwise, it's about connection. It's what do they need? And, I'm already in that situation, putting them in an unnatural environment, living in a stall, working in an arena, all those things. So when I'm there to spend some time with them, I want to give them what they might need. Do they need a walk through the woods? Do they need extra time out in the field? Time with a friend that they won't do unless I'm standing there watching them both, all those things. And so I think humans, it's the same. We tend to use that airline analogy, not put our own oxygen masks on first. We want to take care of others, and be martyrs a lot of the time. And I think when there's a bold statement as all men are evil, or whatever, whatever your hardcore thing is, when you get in the presence of a horse and you start to do little things, little exercises to build your confidence around such a large, intimidating animal, they start to become more aware. And then you move a bit, just like horses, right? You have resistance, and then you have tolerance, where, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not really happy about it.
Mhm.
And then you have this acceptance, or this flow state that you get into in a relationship or a pair.
I love that
Yeah.
word flow, because flow just means there's no restrictions. I mean, there are restrictions, but with less restrictions, you have greater flow.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I love that analogy, the oxygen mask. We've all been taught to put the oxygen mask on ourselves, so then we can take care of the people around us. I mean, it's brilliant, because everyone's putting, they're talking about the people around them, but they're not taking care of themselves first, and knowing who they are, and getting rid of all these resistances, these blockages, and figuring out who they really are. And the horse is just such a mirror to that. That's just, I think, in my goal here, in the horse's advocate, is to help people understand how to connect better with their horses. And I was starting to say that so many people come to me and say, gosh, you're so good with horses. I'd like to be that good. What can I do? And I say, well, how good are you with your parents, your siblings, your spouse, or the guy behind the counter at 7-Eleven? And they inevitably say, not that good. And I said, well, start with your own species. So I've always said, look, get good with being connected with humans, and then bring that to the horse. But I love that you bring these disconnected people, these people that have these issues, and you bring them to the horse as a tool to help them understand who they are. And I don't think people look at that. I think they don't want to look at their horse as a tool. They shouldn't be. They're not a psychoanalyst, not at all. They're just a plain mirror. But you're giving these people the insight and the equipment, the technology, to look at themselves and repair what's in here, and turn to the horse and say, how am I doing? The horse is like, okay, work a little harder.
Exactly.
And then the horse says, we could maybe. And then it gets to that acceptance, and they say, hey, what you doing? I don't know. What you doing? And that's the most interesting thing I find about your approach to this. You're not a horse person teaching people horsemanship. You're teaching people humanship. And so I want to dig into that just a little bit deeper, because we all know that there are some really damaged people out there. But you're not getting those. They're at the assisted living place, the PTSD, the traumatized people, and I get that. But most people who go out and say, hey, I've got some money now, I want to get a horse, they're 30, 40 years old and they want to get going. I'd like to take those people and teach them how they can find themselves. And then have the horse walk up to him and say, you're doing great. And that's kind of what you're doing. So what are some exercises? I'll put those in air quotes. What are some of the things that people have to do? Are there books that they should read? Are they like, I've got some books back here, the 10 years leaderships books back here. I love reading on leadership, because if you can't be a leader, how can you be with anybody? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, do you have a definition of leadership? Do you have a working definition of leadership that you like?
Yeah, it's interesting because Linda Pearlie asked me that very same question. And I was going about because we're grasping for something. And I know what she said. I'm not going to say it. You guys got to listen to hers. But my definition is you're willing to do what you're asking the person to do. If you're wanting your troops to charge into bullets, you've got to be willing to do that too. You got to be, I don't know, you have to be honorable. I don't know. Tell me this. See, I don't even know.
Well, I think if you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different answers. Sure. There are some pillars of leadership, right? What I like to include in varying definitions of it is that another person sees their peers, their coworkers, and elevates them, brings them to show them where they can be their best, where their strengths are, where they can improve, and supports them in that. Yes. Management is such a outdated system that was invented for, I don't know what purposes. Yeah. More control, right? And leadership is something that always existed, and people that were tagged as leaders were people that could inspire others. Yeah. And I feel like when I co-facilitate a session with a horse, we are co-leaders, but that horse shows so much leadership. Here's an interesting quick tidbit. When we have a dog, when we meet a dog and train a dog, get a dog, acquire a puppy, whatever, it's an alpha state. It's a pack animal. It's a predator. And when you earn their loyalty, there is never again a question of who's the leader. You're always their leader.
Right.
A horse, I like to recall the AT&T or Verizon commercials. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Are you my leader now? Are you still my leader? Are you my leader now? How many times do you have to answer that question for a horse when you're working in their mouths?
Yep. I think
they want to know at every time, are you prepared?
I think once people understand that horses live in a world of leadership, their hierarchy, and that they're including you in that hierarchy. And if you're not going to be willing to be the leader, the horse will certainly take over. This is where a lot of people get hurt. But I also think it stems from fear, and leaders cannot be fearful. If they're scared, they cannot show it. They can't say, hey, you underling, go in front of me and run into battle. And if you don't get shot, I'll follow you. That's not leadership. Leadership is, guys, there are bullets coming at us and we're going to make it from here to there. And here I go. Who's with me? And not everybody can. Everyone is scared. They're scared of a horse. They're scared of the people at the workplace. There's bullies at workplaces. afraid of the boss. The boss is demanding too much. I think it boils down to how confident are you? And when somebody becomes really confident in who they are, they're not worried. If they're confident through force, like a dictator, that's not what we're talking about. It's just that you know who you are, and sticks and stones and break my bones, and names will never hurt me, whatever you want to call it. And that you can move forward in your life. And when you start moving forward, everyone wants to follow that. I mean,
Right.
Look at the guy who walks into the room and he's heading to the other side, and all the heads turn and watch him. Who is that person? And it's a matter of them just knowing, and from that, all this energy comes out. Whereas the guy who comes in who's evil, that energy comes out too. And we're like, don't look at me, I'm not here, you know? And the fact that you can bring these people from where they are to a point where the horse comes up to him and says, hey, I want to be with you. That's magical. I think it's magical. It's got to transform so many people. That's kind of cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's very cool. Very rewarding. And it might start with just pulling out a lawn chair and sitting in the pasture.
Mm.
How long will the horse ignore you? What will go through your mind? You know, the longer you sit there, are you going to become more and more insecure and then the horse not come near you? Or are you going to start to find your center and your congruency to the point where you're acting as a leader, you're alerting to sounds outside the pasture that might interest the horse, and the horse comes over and says, hey, maybe we should be herd mates. What are you all about?
You say it depends on what they're thinking. Do you give them skills to clear the mind, to focus on things like, you're a horse and you're out in a big green pasture and there's no flies and you're eating all this grass? I mean, what do you put in these people's minds to make it work?
Typically I'm asking a lot of questions, but there is some direction in terms of perception. You know, are you laser focused? Is your vision, you know, are we using our close set eyes to peer ahead right at the horse as a predator would? Or are we using a soft focus that takes in all our peripheral vision?
Interesting. Yeah.
You know, I mean, start as basic as that. And then where's our breathing rate? Is it very shallow, just in our chest, or are we breathing down into our bellies?
Couldn't agree
increases more. Yeah.
Breath work is so important.
Are you familiar with HRVs, heart rate variabilities?
I measure it. I understand it. I can't control it.
Okay, there you go. There have been a couple of interesting studies with equine facilitated learning work and HRVs, and they were doing the HRV testing on the horses as well as on the participants. And
well, just before you go any further, HRV means heart rate variability, and your heart rate sits to a certain rhythm that's under a certain neuronal control, that when you release that control and let it go in on its own, basically, it will vary the heart rhythm. So it's not lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, but you're gonna have a lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. And that's what was that? and
yes,
that's what
you're right. That's a good example.
And that's what we try to get in our sleep state. When we reach a deep sleep, the heart rate variability becomes larger, which means that we're actually relaxing more. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. The greater the variability of that time between the beats, it's that empty space. You know, it's just like when you learn meditation, you're being taught about the empty space, the space between the thoughts. and changing your thought patterns by creating more space. And it's the heart rate variability is the same philosophy in a lot of ways, where that space between the beats, the more variable it is, the greater health you have, whether it's strength or, whatever measurement of health you want to use, and things that we wear every day now, the Oura rings, Whoop, Fitbits, Apple Watches, they all use some variation of heart rate variability to provide you the information that you're so addicted to seeing.
Yeah.
It's a matter of how much data they input and what we do with it. But the point of the heart rate variability in the studies done, I think Ann Baldwin and Barbara Rector, there was another author in the study, I'm sorry, I can't think of her name at the moment. And I just loved reading. So one of the frequencies there, because when you're doing actual heart rate variability, there's a lot of different frequencies to look at. And it's the very low frequencies that we're interested in, and the harder ones to reach. And when we do very controlled breathing, we even most of the time will miss that because we just get in this pattern. And if we can go parasympathetic, great. But sometimes we can't even do that with very measured breathing. But when we go into the space with the horses, what they're finding is that even though respiration rates increased from a little bit of fear of non-horse people going in spaces with horses, their breathing rate increases, but their heart rate variability also increases. So yeah, and that's directly, it started to mimic what the horse has, because the horse has huge variability in their heart rates. And so that's why we sometimes use that term mirroring, because our hearts will mirror that, what the horse heart, what that impact of the horse heart is, and that coherency of heart to heart relationship.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be beyond everybody's thought process that you can put electrodes on your body, and on an oscilloscope you see it bounce up and down, and they have the PQRS waves, and there's your electrocardiogram. But it seems like a lot of people don't understand that can actually be further from your body and be received by certain animals. And
yes,
you can call it energy or whatever you want to call it. But I think that if your heart rate and your breathing rate is high, you're in a frightened state, and the horse picks up on that. So just a couple of deep breaths just to clear that out, get rid of the adrenaline. And adrenaline, also known as epinephrine, is made by the adrenal glands, the medulla, for instant response. So we instantly have energy, so we can instantly take care of, whatever it is that we need to save our life with. And if you take a couple of deep breaths, that hormone is gone. It goes out and it's dissipated and it's neutralized. And now your body can come down. Also, if you stare straight at the horse, like you say, that vision, that can be very predatory. But if you're like, I don't even look at a horse, I look down and I feel the horse instead of looking at him. Some horses like that. Please tell me that you're in control. Talk to me. But most horses are like, no, don't be a dictator. So those are really cool tools, how to use your eyes, how to find that space between your thoughts to just like kind of relax and let the horse feel this.
And what I have found, because I am working with non-horse people in a horse environment, I do find that there is fear at some level many times. And what I find is that if the person is willing to get congruent with that fear, it's not just take a couple breaths and make the fear disappear magically. You know, the hormones will dissipate and the body chemistry begins to change with those deep breaths. But what's really great is if they can, I allow them and I encourage them to start speaking to their fear and speaking to the horse from that space. And all of a sudden the horse will start to lick and chew. Yeah, I do. I see that. You are fearful, but you recognize it. You're trustworthy now.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can be is untrustworthy by your heart saying one thing and your head saying something totally different.
And it's not just talking, it's sometimes the words you say. You know, like,
yes,
don't be afraid, stand still, I'm not going to hurt you. And the horse like, gone. I just,
yeah, as you're screaming those things, I'm not going to hurt
you. Versus, I love these words. I love you. Just say, I love you to the horse. And the horse is like, oh, what? Huh? You know, it'll be attention grabbing. Use kind words, empowering words like thank you, or you're the best. I'm so grateful. Thank you for being here. But most
grateful,
people are,
appreciative. Yeah.
people come in with this fear and say, I'm not going to hurt you. Oh, yeah? Why did you bring that subject up? Is hurting going to happen? Is it possible with you? And the horse can think it. Just because he can't speak it, he can think it. And if you just try a horse and say, hey, I'm here on love. I know it sounds so frilly. I should have long hairs and beads, you know, but relationships is all about building trust and love. And you can be challenged as a person. I mean, the horse can say, no, I don't think so. And that's where you just say, okay, where's my love coming from? What do I have to do to change the word love out of my mouth that actually has a meaning to this horse? And it's an exercise. It's not overnight, but I love the idea that you can take people, bring them in a group, and affect them in a way that when they leave, they at least know who they are. I think that's brilliant. That's so cool, actually.
It's such a non-judgmental, risk-free environment for people to experiment with self-discovery. That's really what draws me to it, day in and day out. Every day I fall in love with what I do.
What kind of person comes to you? I mean, they obviously want to change. They obviously know they've got a problem. They're willing. That's step in the right direction. How do you keep them there?
Yeah. So, you know, I was a coach prior to coaching with horses. I was a health coach and life coach. And there were there were many more sessions in our interactions. You know, we would work together, you know, pretty consistently for 6 months to enact change.
Wow.
And started partnering with the horses because the change comes from so deep within, comes from their own reflections and their own self-awareness, with the help of a nonverbal sentient being and not another human who's just barking at them. It enacts change so much faster.
Mm.
And I find that if we just have a few meetings over a 3-month period of time, you see, I see huge amounts of change and growth.
Mm. It's got to be so rewarding for you and for them. The horses, they just get rewarded with carrots. I get it.
Now, some of them really like to do the work, you know. My pony Finley, who's a little, you know, I call him the professor because it's just, he would much rather do that than be ridden. You know, he has an opinion about a lot of things and he's happy to bring people along.
Yeah. Yeah. So rewarding. So experiencing equine, com.
Yeah.
People listening to this who are trying to get ahead in their business or in their social life or their personal lives, who find that they're having blocks, they probably benefit from a session or two with you, right?
Yes, I got a little off topic, I guess. You did ask me what kind of people come to me. Um, I deal with some people, some horse people, but not very many, curiously enough. I think a lot of horse people feel like they got it, or that they need a horse trainer,
Right.
you know. So, but I have helped, you know, as a matter of coincidence, I guess, being in the right place at the right time, I have helped some horse people with some nice connections. Um, I get women that want to begin delving into their spiritual growth, to discover what their purpose and passion will be, now that the kids are gone, or they're nearing, you know, a time where they want to leave the corporate environment. They want to delve into their spiritual growth, and legacy. You know, that seems to be a word that is popping up.
Hmm.
Yeah, super interesting.
Legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah, I've raised
Yeah.
kids. I've been successful in business. I'm worried about my legacy. They're really lost, aren't they? Uh,
I don't know if they're lost as much as they are beginning to feel like there's more than the task-oriented life they've been leading.
mm.
Yeah, that tends to be more the reason for that.
I call it a new
Yeah.
chapter in life. Sometimes it's scary, isn't it? Maybe the
Yes.
horses
Yes.
give them some courage, some um, courage to be somebody more than what they thought they were. I know that the horses have lifted me out of me just doing what I did. And yeah, I've been doing it a long time, but even still, you know, even as recently as last week, the horse, you know, they challenge me and I have to continue to become better. And horses do that, don't they? It's not a one and done.
Yeah. And you know, I just want to bring up this story for your listeners, because it was such a great illustration of who you are and what you do. You're so much more than a dentist to these horses. Um, you know, when you were working on my big horse and he started to get a little anxious, and, you know, I mean, he's 1,700 pounds. His
Big horse.
nose is 18 feet in the air
Yep.
when he put on his giraffe neck. And, you know, it's, when he gets a little tense, there's nothing you can do. So you just stopped and you turned and you looked at me and we started telling stories, and I can see that you're connecting with the horse, even though you and I are talking. And it doesn't take but, you know, 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe, and all of a sudden, you know, there's the horse with his head hanging right at your arm, ready to go right back in his mouth.
It's no
And
secret. You have to
yeah,
listen. You have to listen
yeah,
and you
yeah,
have to acknowledge what
yeah,
they're saying. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
that's right. Stephen Covey.
Oh, I stole it from him. I blatant steal.
Blatant.
But it's so true. It works. And
Yeah.
these horses help me become a better communicator, better listener, which is important. And I'm still learning. I'm still growing on that. And I commend you, Kerry, for helping all these people, because shoot, 100 years ago, everybody was using a horse. You had to use a horse, maybe 150 years ago. Even in the cities in 1900s, everybody had a horse. And there was a lot of good communication back then. But now it's all texting and phone calls and, you know, face to face via two-dimensional screen. But when your horse is breathing fire at you, how are you going to react? And it's life-changing. It really is. So kudos to you for helping these people find their way, because a horse is brilliant at it. Horses haven't forgot about people. They know what's going on.
Yeah. It's it's the concept of biomimicry. It really, when you get down to it, which is
What's that word?
Biomimicry.
Okay, it hiccuped.
Oh, yeah. So biomimicry is the study of nature and how nature solves its problems, and then how we can adapt that to humanity and solve our problems. We're mimicking
Sure.
biology.
Sure.
And yeah, that's what we do. We observe the horse's biology and nature of the horse, and we learn strategies from that.
As we should, because we're not one creature. We're a world of creatures. Right. And I go so far to say, yeah, and it's all powered by that energy. So, yes. Kerry, thank you so much. I think we've pretty much dug into this approach of helping people become better communicators with themselves and how the horse can help that. I think a lot of horse people listening to this are going to pick up a couple of things from this and say, huh, I need to wear a heart rate variability watch. No.
No.
You just have to.
No, but if they just learn if they can just learn a pause before a reaction, that would be a huge step in the right direction.
That's brilliant. I mean, if everyone's listened to the very end of this and got that one little tidbit, that was gold right there. Pause. You don't have to react. You know, you probably have to act, but not react. Pause. I love that. I'm going to steal that, Kerry. I love that.
Thanks, Doc. You're welcome to it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. I'm going to hit the button and I want to ask you a question after we go off, but thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was great fun.
Hey everyone, Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There's two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.